Okay, so you brought us a story today that really gives you pause. It's quite eye-opening.
Yeah, it's one of those ones that makes you look a bit closer.
We're going to get into this recent situation that's out of Oakland. A Black and Latino couple, apparently their home appraisal came back way, way lower than they expected.
Right. And it's not just, an isolated weird thing. We've got a news report here from SFIS detailing it.
Okay.
And what we want to do really is unpack this specific case, understand the details, maybe explore why this kind of thing might still be happening.
And what it tells us about the housing market, right? Because that's the bigger picture.
Exactly. What does it reveal? So that's the mission for this deep dive.
All right, let's jump in. The Oakland case itself, what are the core facts here? We know the appraisal was low.
Significantly low. The report says their home was valued at, get this, $250,000 less than it had been valued previously.
No.
In recent years, even.
Wow, $250,000. That's not a small discrepancy. That's huge.
It's a massive gap. And it had, real consequences. We're not just talking numbers on paper.
What happened then?
Well, the state of California actually stepped in. They're ordering the appraisal company involved. It's a company called Clear Capital, based out in Reno, ordering them to pay the couple $75,000 in restitution.
75 grand.
Yeah.
Okay, and this is recent news.
Yeah, announced just the week before this SFIST article came out, which was dated April 15th, 2025. So very current.
But here's the part that really makes you think, isn't it? That valuation, the one by Clear Capital in 2022, it was apparently $254,000 lower. So pretty much that $250,000 figure lower than another appraisal.
Okay.
On the exact same house, just 8 months before.
8 months.
Same house, over $250K difference.
That kind of swing, in such a short time frame, that really raises questions, doesn't it?
It absolutely does.
Well,
Market shifts happen, sure, but that much on the same property.
It suggests something else might be going on beyond just standard market fluctuations or, slight differences in how appraisers work.
And the impact, you said there were real consequences.
Definitely.
Yes.
Because of that super low appraisal, the couple tried to refinance their home.
Which lots of people want to do, lock in better rates.
Exactly. But they were turned down. The low value made it impossible.
Oh, man.
And it didn't stop there. Ultimately, the situation basically forced them to sell their home and move.
So they lost their home because of this appraisal.
It seems that was the direct result. Yeah, it wasn't just numbers. It uprooted their lives.
That's rough. And you mentioned this isn't maybe a totally isolated thing.
Right. The SFIS piece explicitly connects it to another case, maybe one people remember, from Marin County back in 2021.
Oh, yeah, I do recall that one. That got a lot of attention. That was the Black family whose home was undervalued by, what was it, almost $500,000?
Yeah.
Something crazy like that.
Exactly that. Nearly $500,000 difference. A huge lowball figure.
And how did that one come to light? I remember there was a specific detail.
There was. They actually had a white friend pose as the homeowner for a second appraisal.
Right. I remember now.
And that second appraisal from the same firm came back significantly higher.
That's just stark.
Yeah.
Having a white friend stand in changes the value by $500,000.
It certainly seemed to in that instance. It was a very clear sort of comparison point that highlighted the potential for bias.
Yeah, no kidding. And that Marin case, it went national, didn't it?
It did. Big headlines. And it actually led to the Department of Justice opening an investigation into racial bias in the whole home appraisal industry.
Okay, so DOJ gets involved, national attention. You'd think things would start to shift, right?
You would hope so. You'd hope that level of scrutiny would lead to, more checks and balances, more consistency.
But the Oakland case.
But this Oakland case, as the article puts it, suggests these issues are apparently still happening, despite everything that came out of the Marin situation.
So the problem persists. Wow.
It seems that way, which leads into some of the official commentary around this latest case.
Yeah. Who's weighed in?
Kevin Kish, he's the director of the California Civil Rights Department. He gave a quote that really connects the dots.
Okay, what did he say?
He said, whether it's lowball appraisals or a history of redlining, communities of color across the country continue to confront the multi-generational harms of housing discrimination.
Can I get straight to redlining?
Right. And he continues, appraisers, lenders, and brokers all have a responsibility to prevent discrimination in real estate transactions.
So he's explicitly linking this appraisal issue to that much larger historical context of redlining.
Exactly. For listeners who might not know, redlining was that awful practice where banks basically drew lines on maps around certain neighborhoods, often communities of color, and just refused to offer loans or insurance there.
Yeah, devastating effects that lasted for generations. Made it so much harder to build wealth through owning a home.
Precisely. So Kish is saying, look, this isn't just a random appraisal issue. It potentially fits into this bigger systemic pattern of housing discrimination that's been going on for ages.
And he puts the onus not just on the appraiser, but
On everyone. Appraisers, lenders, brokers. He's saying the whole system, the different players in a real estate deal, they all need to be part of preventing this.
that makes sense. It's an interconnected process. Bias anywhere can skew the outcome.
Absolutely. A breakdown at any point, valuation, lending, brokerage can create these huge disadvantages.
So back to the Oakland case specifically.
Mm-hmm.
Consequences? We know the company pays $75K. What about the actual appraiser who did the valuation?
Well, their name isn't being released publicly,
Okay,
but the article does mention a requirement. They will have to watch an ABC News documentary.
documentary.
Yeah, specifically the one that covered the Marin County couple's story. So it's like mandated viewing, perhaps for education or awareness.
Interesting. And the Oakland couple themselves.
Their names are being kept private, which
Yeah.
seems totally reasonable given everything they went through, the disruption, having to move.
Yeah, privacy makes sense.
But this kind of brings up the question of, what does accountability really look like here?
Right. There's the settlement money, there's the documentary viewing.
But as the S-Fist article notes, and it's a powerful point, the damage is largely already done for this couple.
Yeah, I was thinking that. $75,000. I mean, something, obviously.
Sure.
But does it make up for being denied refinancing? Missing out on a potentially years of lower interest rates and then being forced to sell your house and find somewhere else?
Mhm.
That's a massive life disruption.
It really is. Not being able to refi, that hits your long-term finances, your ability to build equity. And being forced out adds instability, stress, probably more financial strain. It's not easily undone.
So when we step back and look at this whole situation, what are the main things that stick out?
For me, number one is just how persistent this issue seems to be. Racial bias, or at least massive disparities that look like bias, in appraisals.
Yeah, even after the Marin case blew up and the DOJ got involved, it's still apparently happening. It doesn't feel like just, a couple of bad apples.
Right. It points towards something more ongoing. And the second thing is the very real, tangible financial harm.
Definitely. This isn't theoretical. It directly stopped them from refinancing, likely cost them money, and ultimately cost them their home. It impacts wealth building, financial security, all of it.
And that ties into the third point, which is the systemic angle Kish brought up. Connecting it to redlining, historical discrimination, it suggests these aren't just individual errors, but maybe symptoms of deeper issues baked into the system.
Which then makes you question the effectiveness of the current responses, right?
Exactly. That's the fourth takeaway. Maybe settlements are happening, there's some required training, but do these measures fully address the harm done? And do they prevent it from happening again? The article suggests maybe not entirely.
So wrapping this up then, this deep dive into the Oakland appraisal situation, it's pretty sobering.
It really is.
It's a concrete example showing these appraisal disparities, potentially discriminatory ones, are still very much a reality, and the consequences are severe for homeowners.
And it strongly hints that this isn't just about individual appraisals, but ties into broader systemic problems in housing that probably need a much closer look.
Which kind of leaves us with a final thought, maybe something for listeners to chew on.
Go for it.
Well, if individual settlements and watching documentaries aren't enough to fix the root problem, what would be? What kind of larger systemic changes could actually tackle racial bias in appraisals head-on and make sure things are genuinely fair for everyone trying to own a home?
That's the big question, isn't it? Definitely food for thought.
It is. Well, thank you for bringing this story forward. It's an important one to understand.